Okay, we've got all of our parts for the high pressure nozzle to go back together. Here is the original filter that went in these. You can't get those any longer. But from Brian at Vintage Double Hose, you can get a filter and a spacer, and that's what replaces this original one here. So that's what we'll go back with. You see the volcano orifice, and everything's in really good shape. And then you've got your high pressure seat. It goes in first, and then your spring, and all this has been cleaned up. And then you've got your spring block, your castle block goes in. And then on these three parts here, the filter will have the rough side up. This is the rough side, so it goes up. Then on the spacer, you want the flat side up. I hope you can see that. This is the round side. You see it's got a shoulder that cuts off there, where this is flat. So that goes on. And then the same thing with the circlip. This is the flat side, and this is the curved side. So we want that to go on just like that. Now, this is very difficult to do, to get it back in. There was a special tool that you could buy from various outlets, but we've got a lathe here at the shop, and so my son-in-law turned us one of these out. It has a recess here that will go around the outside of that, and you put your parts in there and your clip, and then you just put that on there and push it in, and it will lock the clip in. It takes a lot of leverage to get that in, and I had to take it over to another bench. But anyway, this piece goes on like that, and then you put your circlip in there, and then you just press it in. You can take a wooden dowel. In fact, the technical manual on this says take a wooden dowel and push that down, and then take your snap ring pliers and put your clip in. I've done it that way, but it's extremely hard, and this tool makes it a whole lot easier. But there's the high pressure nozzle all put together and ready to go in. Here is the DA Aqua-Master service kit that I get from Rob at the Scuba Museum. It has this washer, and then your first stage diaphragm, your gasket that goes on the cans, then this goes in behind the high pressure nozzle. You get a new nut and 2 new screws for the low pressure valve, and then there is your new low pressure seat, which goes into this. So we've got that all cleaned up, and you can see it looks really nice. Put that in there. Make sure it's seated good. So we've got our new seat in, and now we put our spring on, and then we will put it inside the carrier here. And I'm going to go ahead and use my pop-it tool to do this. Makes it a little bit easier. Now when you go to put the washer on, the washer needs to be flat side up. There's the rounded side, I guess you can see that, and then there's the flat side. It rides on the horseshoe fits up under that, and then you put, I'm going to just reuse the old nut. I like the smaller nut a little better. And then screw that on to where you have, the technical manual says, where you have 2 or 3 threads sticking up. There it is all together. I've got about 3 threads showing here. And you will do a final adjustment on that once you get everything together, get your IP pressure set and everything, and then you will adjust this. And the horseshoe will go under that washer. That's why you want the round side down, because it needs to ride on this and you don't want that to bind. Now we're ready to install the high pressure diaphragm. You just stick that in there and then take the end of your brass pick, make sure it's seated in there right. And then we will put the new gasket on this. And then we're ready to go back into the can. We've got the gasket on. There's only one way that this will go in. It goes in like that. And then we will put the ring back on. I'll snug it down with the spanner wrench. And then you're ready to put your low pressure seat back in. Here's where the Venturi works. And you screw that in as far down as you can till it bottoms out. And then make sure that you have one of these holes pointing into the port right here. That's where your Venturi comes in. And I told you a while ago, or when we tore it apart, that these little notches go around this to where it can't unscrew. Okay, let's get the inside done. You'll take your Teflon washer that comes in your kit and put it in. It's a really tight fit, so you're going to have to take some kind of flat edge and make sure that that gets seated down in there real good. And then I'll put just a little bit of silicone grease here on the middle of the diaphragm, not much, just a little. And then there was just a tad bit of a burr right there, a piece of trash, didn't clean off. That's got it now. Then we go in with our spring, and then we go in with this. And then take your 1 1/8 wrench and snug that one down. And I put just a little silicone around the threads on this as well. And then screw that in. That doesn't have to be, this is where you set your IP pressure. And so you'll make a final adjustment on that in a moment. And now we're ready to put the horseshoe on. Now remember, we want this valve turned to where we have a hole right here that's pointing out of the port there. And then you've got the notch right here that will lock that in place. And I'm using the new screws on this. The old ones would have worked, but I got new ones, and so why not use them? And I need a dozen hands to do this. Now, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this on camera, but what we've got to do is take the horseshoe. And the reason, remember that we put that washer with the rounded side down, we're going to raise that up, and this goes under the washer and nut, and then the rounded side will allow it to pivot on this and not bind up. I've got it in. I've got the washer here on top of the horseshoe, so I can go ahead and tighten down these screws now that hold the post up. and we will do a final adjustment on that once we get the IP pressure set. Now we're ready to put the high pressure nozzle and yoke back on. Take this Teflon washer and make sure that it seats around the way it should. There's a little shoulder right there that has to go on. Okay, that's got that. And then take your pin and foot and stick it in. Make sure it moves. Run that up through your yoke. And we're trying to get this to keep from dropping out. So, and I do put just a tad bit of silicone right on the end of that. Easiest way is to turn that up in like that, where that foot won't fall out, that in your pin. Go ahead and screw it in. And take your 1-inch wrench and go ahead and tighten that down. Okay, we're ready to set the intermediate pressure. I've got the air turned on and you're looking at the inside, and we're about 70 pounds. It needs to be between 125 and 150. So you screw this in and you're watching the gauge go up. And the field manual, the Navy field manual says to, with a tank of 500 pounds of air, that's what I've got in this one, that you screw that in until it starts leaking. You hear it, and then back it out about a quarter turn. And that's going to put you about 140 pounds, somewhere right in there. So we're going to take this nut and screw it in until it goes to leaking. You hear it leaking? Now we'll back it off just before it breaks. We're right on the edge. You hear it leaking? Still leaking? There we go, right on the edge. Now your first stage and your second stage are perfectly tuned. Once I get the second stage adjusted to the first stage, I want to keep that nut where it's at. And so I just take just a little bit of fingernail polish and put around the threads on that. And when that dries, it won't move, but yet you can, if you need to later on as things get seated and there may be a change, that you can turn that again. Here's the exhaust can, and here's the new duckbill. Looks a lot different than the other one did. This opens up right in here on both sides to let the air out, and water pressure will close that. You see this little ridge right here. Now this will go in the can, and then from here to here will fold back over the outside of the can here. I like to cut mine right along that ridge to where that you don't have all of this hanging down right here. And it's easier to do that before you put that duckbill in. Just take a pair of scissors and just cut across that. Doesn't matter if it's just a little bit ragged. And then we will turn it over And we'll fold that over and get it in there enough where I can grab it on the outside. And then you've got this little ridge right there. And you just take and fold that over. Make sure that's laying flat. And that's it. We're ready to go. When you go to put in the main diaphragm, make sure that these two metal tabs set right in the middle of the fingers on the horseshoe. And then when you go to put the cans together, let the corner of that label center in that spigot and align the fourth hole to the middle of the spigot. This trough that comes up on the C-clips here needs to go toward the front. That sits in there just like that right there. You want to put one here, one here, one here, one here, one in the middle, and then space the other two out. I can't do that on camera. I'll go off camera and do that, and I'll be back. Once you get all your clips on, it's a good idea to take your vice grips and go around. Be careful, don't hit the can just on the clip. And pinch those together real good. And then that tightens them up and where they won't move. And now you're ready to go to the hoses and go to work on them. This is the mouthpiece, and you have the silicone diaphragms that go into these, what they call wagon wheels. And when this is up with the logo rat, your air is going to come in this way and go out this way. So you want this diaphragm in like that, to where when the air comes in, it will push it open. And then you want this diaphragm in, so if water comes in from this way, it traps it, but whenever you blow a breath of air out, it comes out. So air going in this side and air coming out this side. Now, the original ones that they made did not have these stop valves in it, and the entire hose could fill up with water. So this was a great easy clear was what this was called. And it was a great innovation, a great addition to the double hose. Simple matter of getting the hoses on, just slide them on. They're silicone, brand new silicone hoses. They will last for the rest of your life, they say. Real flexible, really nice. Okay, now air is coming in on this side, and so we want to put that hose on that end of the regulator, pull it up to where that knot goes right in there, and then air will go out of this one. And I do like to, I don't know if you ought to or not, I do like to put just a little bit of silicone on that to just get the hose to slide up where you don't mess up the duck bill. You wouldn't think that just that little bit of extra would make it that hard, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get that on camera or not. Yeah, I can get it on there. I don't want to turn it, because I'll turn the duck bill. There we go. All we got to do now is put our clamps on, and we're ready to hook this thing up to a tank of air and get going.